Hello and welcome back to Mainly Menswear. My name is Dwayne McLeod and I am glad that you're here. In today's video we're going to be wandering off into the weeds of tailoring and working on a welt pocket. And I think that this will be a video that all of the tailoring geeks out there will enjoy. And while we're on the subject of enjoying these videos, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up. I don't pretend to understand how the algorithm works, but I believe that by liking these videos, you will actually help other sewists just like yourself find this channel. I know that my content is a little bit different, but I think that there is an audience for it. Today's video is a little bit lengthy, and for that I apologize. I'm not really fond of long videos. So why not go ahead and get your chalk sharpened and we will jump right in. I have not done a video in quite some time. Today I'm resurrecting an old project. This is the Belvedere Waistcoat by Thread Theory Design, and I started this project last spring. I actually had some leftover boiled wool from a winter coat that I had made, and it seemed to be perfect for making this waistcoat. I did a couple of videos as a part of this project last spring, and you may want to refer to them because I'm going to be interfacing the front of this waistcoat with a hair canvas. And there are two other videos up on my channel, one on how to put the dart in the hair canvas, and also how to replace the edge of the hair canvas with a muslin strip that will greatly reduce the bulk, especially when you're working with a wool fabric like this boiled wool that I'm going to be working with today. The Belvedere Waistcoat can be made with a variety of pockets. On their website there are PDFs that you can download to put patch pockets on the front, and they also give directions on how to put welt pockets on the front. And I have to say that I am not a real huge fan of the welt pockets that are used on this pattern. I sort of describe them as a welt pocket made down inside a window, and they tend to be quite bulky because they're made with the fashion fabric, in this case a heavy wool fabric, and they also tend to gape open like you see on this photo here. And I have decided that I'd like to do something a little more tailored look. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be taking a welt pocket design from another pattern that I've made. This is a historical pattern by the company Laughing Moon, and I have made a couple of these vests. It's a shawl colored vest, and I do like the pattern and the style of the welt pocket used in this pattern, so I'm going to be adapting it to my Belvedere waistcoat. Before I launch into something like this, I always like to make a trial run just to make sure that it's going to work. And we almost always have scraps left over from cutting out our projects, and this is a great way to use up some of those scraps. So what I did here is what I think is a more tailored welt pocket. The ends eventually will be secured down. I do those from the back side by just kind of stitching invisibly from the back to tack the pocket down, the welt down. But what I like about this is that the pocket bag is tucked down inside and none of it is visible, and you don't have that gaping that I think is so unattractive. Also, the pocket bag, rather than being made out of a your fashion fabric or heavy wool fabric can be made out of a lighter weight fabric. This is just some muslin that I used as my trial run just to see if this was possible. And it is, so I am going to proceed. I did need to draft some new pattern pieces for this. So this is the little piece for the welt, which will be kind of folded up and turned. And this is the piece for the pocket bag, which will be cut out of a lighter weight fabric. Before starting any welt pocket, you want to reinforce the area of the welt with a strip of muslin. And that's what I have here. You want to cut a piece of muslin that's 2 inches wide and 2 inches wider than your welt. So in my case, my welt is 4.5 inches, so this is a 6.5 inch strip of muslin that is basted, centered over the stitching line. And this will help reinforce the welt because eventually we're going to be slashing through here, which is the part that scares the heck out of all of us. And you just want to make sure that your fabric is stable here. It's not going to stretch. I should also mention that, and I hope you can see here, the instructions for the Belvedere waistcoat tell you to press the darts to one side. I think they tell you to press them towards the back. If you're working with a heavy fabric like a wool fabric, which is not uncommon when you're making one of these waistcoats, I think it's advisable to cut that dart open and press it flat. That way you'll be much less bulky when you go to attach your welt right over that dart, which you see is happening here. So I'm going to set this aside and bring this one over. If you have never made a welt pocket here, I just thought that I would show you how to baste it on. It's really not rocket science. You want to use some basting thread, but you will have like a chalk mark here on your placement line, and you'll put your needle in and then flip your welt back so that you can see your placement line underneath. You take a little bite. You want to try to go through your reinforcement in the back, and then you're going to come back up on your placement line just like that. And you will just continue to work your way across, flipping your work up to make sure that you're on the line, and then coming back up on your placement line. Once we get to the end, you will secure this with a back stitch. With your welt basted into place, the next step is to baste the pocketing on top of the welt. So we're making kind of a sandwich here. And I just kind of chalk marked some lines here on mine just to help make this a little bit clearer. Bottom line here is going to be our placement line. And so this is going to get basted directly over the placement line on our welt, which is also basted on the placement line on our waistcoat front. The pocketing is also cut wide. In my case, I've made my pocketing an inch wider on each side than the welt. A lot of patterns are very skimpy here and just give you like 5/8 of an inch, and you end up struggling. And just do yourself a favor and make your pocketing at least an inch wide on each side. Once the whole pocket has been formed, it can all be trimmed down. Plus it's all inside and nobody ever sees any of it. So do yourself a favor and just make your pocketing a couple inches wider than your welt. In my case, what I would consider the box that's going to be sewn here is a 1/2 inch wide. My welt is an inch wide. This was our mock-up here, so that the pocketing ends up being tucked down inside a half an inch. So none of it is going to be visible, which I just think is a much more, I don't know, professional, and it's just a much more tailored look. So just as I did basting the welt to the fashion fabric, we're going to go ahead and use the same process and baste the pocketing onto the welt. And again, just be as accurate as you can be here. And once this is all basted into place, we'll actually get down to some real sewing. It's time to actually sew the pocket. I consider it sort of sewing the box. And you're going to want to set your machine for a fairly small stitch, especially at the corners of the box, because that's where this is all going to be clipped. You're going to want to start your stitching somewhere in the middle. You don't want to start at one of the ends. And you are just going to use your basting stitches as a guide and sew the welt to the edge. And here you're going to need to use your sense of touch. You want to sew right to the very edge of that welt, and you're just going to kind of sneak up on it, if you will. You may even want to use your hand wheel, and when you've come off that edge of that welt, you should be able to feel it. You're going to want to sink your needle. You want your needle down, and you're going to turn your work, and you are going to stitch right along the edge of that welt up to the next corner. So I'm kind of feeling it here, and we're going to just stitch up right along there till we get to the next guideline, which is a half an inch away. Again, you want to drop your needle. You're going to turn your work, and now we're going to stitch along this next line. This line of stitching is a little less hair-raising as the other one, I find. And we're going to come down here. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I use my fingers a lot to kind of keep things lined up. And again, using your fingers, you're going to feel for the edge of that welt. I think we're there right now. Sink your needle. We're going to come back, and we're going to come down along the side. I think we're there. Again, drop the needle, turn the corner, and this will be, and we'll complete the box here. I think that will do it. Our threads here. Here you see our box sewn in the back, and I'm just going to double check that I haven't caught the welt in my stitching, and I don't believe that I have, so that's a very good sign. So we'll take this back to the bench, do the clipping and the final press. So this is the part that we all dread, right? This is where you actually have to cut the welt open. And you just want to use the sharpest pair of scissors that you have. And for me, it's these very old thread snips, but they are very sharp at the tip, and they cut very well. So what you're going to do, make sure that you haven't got anything under here, right, before you're going to cut this open. But you are going to kind of cut down, trim down through the center of the box, and you're going to be going through all the layers, right, through the fashion fabric and the reinforcement. So here's a point where we're going to be starting this little triangle. So using your snips, you're going to very carefully cut into this corner. And I'm kind of doing it by layers. I do like a top layer, and then I go into the bottom layer. You want to get right into this corner. You don't want to overshoot the corner, and then again, you don't want to stop too shy of the corner. Otherwise, you're going to get kind of a tuck there. So just very carefully continue to snip away until you're right into that corner. And we'll do this at all four corners of the box. Once you're satisfied with all your clipping, at this point, I would go in and remove the basting along your placement line. It frequently makes it difficult to do the pressing. It interferes with it. So just be very careful with, how you take this basting out. My preferred tool is this bamboo point turner. It's a little bit safer than, say, using a seam ripper where you run the risk of potentially ripping your fabric. Nobody wants that to happen. Once you've removed the basting here along your placement line, all of this pocketing is going to get turned to the back side. So you're going to flip all of this to the back. Sort of like this. And take it to your ironing board, and you will press this all into shape. You will see how it's all going to kind of fall into place for you. So I'm going to go and do the final pressing, and we are almost done with this pocket. So things are moving right along here. I've pressed the welt. Here you can see the pocketing, which is nicely tucked down inside the welt. You want to leave the basting around your reinforcement. That's going to come into play when we actually attach the hair canvas front to the front of the vest. Remaining step is to actually complete sewing the pocket bag. So you are going to want to stitch down through the little triangle. I've just kind of chalk marked where I'm going to go. You probably want to round the corners. They say that prevents lint from collecting in the corners of your pocket bag. And then we'll go back up to the other side. So I'm going to take this back to the machine, sew that, and then we are on the home stretch. So the pocket bag has been sewn. You can trim this down as much as you like. This is why I like to leave a lot of extra here. It gives plenty of material to trim. And you want to be sure to baste this pocket closed. And so just using some basting thread and a little diagonal stitch, you're going to baste this closed until your project is finished. And this just helps keep everything in position. It's also going to help in the next step when we actually secure the ends of the welt by sewing from the back side. So I'm going to go finish that, and then we'll complete this whole pocket. The final step is just to secure the ends of the welt, and this is done from the back side. You just want to thread up a needle, and you'll be able to feel where the welt ends with your finger. And this doesn't have to be fancy. It's just a basic kind of diagonal stitch. And you are just going to kind of work your way down the edge of your welt. And you can check from time to time to make sure that your stitches aren't kind of overshooting the mark. But this doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be durable. So I will probably work my way, down the welt and back up to the top a couple of times to complete this. So in closing, I hope that that this has been informative for any of you that want to up your tailoring game. I know that this is not everybody's cup of tea, but my goal of this channel has always been to help other sewists who are just like me, trying to improve and learn through their sewing practice all the time. So I wish you all happy sewing. Enjoy the time in your sewing space. The days are getting longer and brighter, and I think that we're all feeling a lot more energetic. I know that I am. So take care, happy sewing, and be well.